that's why I want to evaluate what you, it is a public meeting. I mean, that's it's the opportunity for the public to attend. Yes, if I walked in here naked, you would have all thrown me out too, but it's a public meeting. It's not just, if you really have a situation where you're dealing with a private scenario, it's the developer that somebody wants to meet with. That's something that, let's look at that issue when it comes up. We can evaluate what you do in that situation. But most of the meetings that you're talking about, they really are public meetings. So there's not an issue with, you know, all of you attending, going in and sitting as observers.
Let me make it a little more realistic. Say it's something we go to and we have to pay $5 to get in. So a couple of us go because we want to go to it.
But it's a seminar, it's generally open to the public. It's
but you gotta pay.
It's teaching land use things.
Okay.
Yeah, just don't talk business, just don't talk about your neighborhood council business.
Okay, so as long as we don't discuss, we're all right.
See, I think you're getting confused with what the concept is open to the public. It doesn't necessarily mean, you can go to a training session. Let's say you want to go to Pierce College and they're putting on you know, a seminar about land use in the valley, and you have to pay the $30 or whatever it is. I mean, that's still something, it's available. The public could still go and do it. I mean, you're paying for the class, you're paying for that fee. So there are events where you may find yourself at with other neighborhood council people, all right? Just remember the first rule in that situation is do not talk neighborhood council business with that other person.
Okay,
or issues that could come before your board.
I went to the mayor's budget day. The public was not invited to that. Specific neighborhood council members were only invited to that. It was not noticed. It was held with specific invitations, and there were more than 2 of us there.
Yeah, but you're talking about the city's budget.
Right, and we were members of the budget committee.
Well, then let's discuss this later. We'll talk with you outside this meeting. So we'll have additional follow-up or discussion with you about the situation.
Okay.
But in
Jerry,
meeting,
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
the budget day, there's public going there. There is public. There's general citizen public. You just have people don't know about it. But for the LA budget day, there's general public there.
Oh, it wasn't. The one that I went to was specific invitation at somebody's house that the mayor invited us to.
So let's just follow. We'll do that because we're kind of going in a little different direction.
But I'm trying to nail down what
you
know what can we and how can we carry out the business of our committees and do it competently without crossing over.
See, I don't want to get into this right now. I mean, let's have this discussion afterward because I think I have an easy answer for you,
okay.
But I don't want to go into this right now. And it's not an appropriate forum to discuss every issue that you guys might be facing. So this is a public meeting. There's a need. So, you know, you have an attorney-client confidence with us. So when we have a discussion, all right, they're normally protected by that attorney-client privilege. Now, in a public setting, that doesn't apply. So there are questions that I need to ask you and information that I need to ask you that need to be protected in order for us to have this discussion. And the same thing applies with, you know, any other number of conversations. So I'm not trying to put you off or try to not answer your question. I think that it's more appropriate for us to have a private discussion about this so we can get into it at the depth that I want to go into it with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Just a quick question on what she was saying earlier. You know, in regards to committees, so let's just say in that particular situation, you have a forum of 3 people. You can vote and come to a decision, and then the committee presents to the board, right? I think that's what you were saying like an hour ago, right? So even in that particular, for example, in Plum Committee, there's a committee of 5 people. You need 3 people to have a quorum. The 3 people can vote on certain issues, and then that gets. And then that recommendation gets put forward in the board, right?
Yeah, why don't you change your committees to a majority of the committee as a recommendation? You could change it. So if you only have 3 show up, then you need to have 3 vote. Right? It's a thought that you might want to think about or consider. So, as an idea. You know, I'm happy to stay as long as you guys want to. There's just like a couple of things.
Well, I just will say, we do have 4 items of business that I would like to take care of tonight.
Okay.
So, you know, to the extent that we can get to that, it's 8:45, just
So
FYI.
I'll do the you know, one of the quick exercises, and maybe I don't need to get into it in that much detail, but you said we have most of our committee chairs here, right?
Right.
So we have a lot of them. This is what I want you guys to do as the committee chair for at least the next couple of meetings that you do. Let's start, you know, with the agenda that we have for tonight's meeting, you know. Start including, like with the public comment, this type of language here that lists out what the public is. Start including that on all your agendas. Double check that your committees, okay, you'll see under here there's a language about where records can be located, all right? I think it's under, it says about government code section 54957, writings are here. Double check that this is on your committee agenda, all right? So make sure that's included. The next thing is, let's go, just a couple of tips though, about writing, and you know, and this is something, this is a, let's go beyond the Brown Act kind of standard at this point in time. Do not use abbreviations anymore. DOT, everybody knows what DOT is, but somebody may not. Use Department of Transportation, you know, CUP, conditional use, spell it out so people know. Make sure that on all of your items, all right, you need to write it in such a sense that it gives a 6-year-old an idea about what you're gonna do. So, you know, if you have, just answer the question for every agenda item. You know, basically the who, what, why, you know, why, whens, everything that you wanted. Everything that you would wonder on the agenda, right? And the what you're going to do, right? What you're going to do. All right. So we want to have all of these on the agenda, so that way they're covered. So, you know, if you have, you know, the project on Zelda, let's say that that's it, right? Now you're writing it, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna put this on, right? What's the first kind of problem here that we've seen, right, with this? Right?
Only 2 words.
Yeah, and look, the Brown Act, it doesn't care how many words you use. I mean, they're saying, like, you know, try 20 will give you a good idea. I don't care. You could write. You're not limited by it. All right. So put down what you need to do. You know. So you want to say, like, you know, what kind of project? You know, the apartment. You know, the apartment development project on XYZ Street in Zelda, where they're applying for a CUP that will do a setback of 20 feet. And then possible action includes providing recommendations to the board for the committee's you know, support or opposition on this project. So now, you know, you've put that down, and I just picked the land use one, not because of any issue, but it's one that kind of comes up a lot. But it gives you an idea, like that depth that you really want to try to get into all of the items on the agenda.
You know, use our agenda and tell us what might be wrong with
well, I helped do your agenda for tonight.
Okay.
So,
what was wrong with it?
Nothing.
Nothing.
So this is the standard to try to aim at.
Yeah, this is a good, you know, like, this is an example, you know, use it. You see, like what we did, like even with the descriptions, you know. Later on, we have some items on here. You know, we're approving a neighborhood purposes grant to who? The North Valley YMCA for their Thanksgiving meals program in the amount of $1,000. So it gives you an idea or a description of what may be on. And there's always room for improvement. I'm sure, you know, everybody can do this. You can always improve on it. And I'm not suggesting that it's perfect. You could easily, language can always be improved, all right? But it gets you to the point, it's like, well, people have a really good sense now by reading this, what it is that's going to be discussed or acted upon. You know, like, you also want to be careful not to trap yourself with something on the agenda, all right? So, for example, if you look at item number 3, it'll talk about discussion and possible action approving an expenditure not to exceed $500. So do you understand why we put that not to exceed 500? Because it gives you, you may do less. You may not have something, you may not have as much that you need. So the amount, you want to be flexible with your description on the agenda to cover kind of the contemplated action that your board may think of. Now with the committees, it's going to be pretty easy. You know, you're just going to put, you know, possible action includes making recommendation to the board on, you know, supporting or opposing this project, right? Because basically all your committees are going to come back with recommendations to the board for action. So you can go ahead and put that or include that on the agenda. But one thing is, for now with the committee chairs, let's maybe make a buddy with another committee person who will work with you, and you can exchange your agenda before your committee meeting just to have somebody else look at it. Because, you know, like my background was land use, all right? So I'm used to land use lingo, and I will have a bad habit of, you know, reverting to things like that. And you forget. So if you give it to somebody who's in a different area, they're going to look at it and they're going to say, like, I have no idea what this is about. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, well, tell me. And then that collaboration, it can kind of help you improve your agendas. So let's do that for a short while, just till you guys, like, you know, get into a really good groove about improving it. And this is not a critique about anything that you've done before, but it's like, let's help make you guys a model here on how these can be done and how they can be improved. So get your buddy, another committee, not on your same committee, but another committee, so that way you can kind of do that playoff on one another and just check it real quick. And then work with the Lois, you know, send it over and she'll see it. We'll make sure that your agendas start looking really, really good and have a lot of information. I think I had one question there first, and then I'll come back to you. Yes?
I have a quick question, just as reference, because you brought it up on number 3. What if the issues that are brought before the board, and the majority thereof, are not coming from first the standing committee? In other words, for instance, number 3, as you discussed, is an advertisement seeking to inform stakeholders. So would it not be proper that first go before the outreach committee, and then a recommendation come to the board? You know,
one thing with the board always has jurisdiction over its committees, okay? The board can do whatever it wants. It can pull something from the committee. It doesn't have to ever be approved by a committee. It doesn't have to go through a committee first before it comes to the board. The board always has that power or authority. They're the boss. It's like, okay, this is, you know, no, we're going to hear this issue. It doesn't have to ever go to a committee. The committees are there to facilitate the operations of the board, not to hamper the board's operations. They may want to consider the issue, so it's before the board for consideration for them to act upon.
Okay, my only point being is we had discussed previously that although there is a listing of the standing committees, there's absolutely no, in the bylaws, there's absolutely no time at all when those committees meet. In other words, it doesn't say they meet quarterly, whatever, so you can have them all listing down there, and all of the motions or discussions that are brought by the board. And one other point, there is not any requirement or transparency as far as who is bringing the original item.
None of these are Brown Act issues.
Okay.
These are suggested. You know, what you can do is, you know, make these suggestions to the board. They can decide, like, well, you know, maybe this is a good idea. Maybe we do want to try to have our standing committees meet a little more regularly, and they can try to come up with days. The problem with it, remember, is while you provide these recommendations, they're going to have a different issue. It's like, yeah, but we don't have the work that justifies meeting that type of regular basis. So these ideas that you may have, they go to maybe improving the operations of the board, but it's really up to the board to decide whether or not they want to adopt them. And there's no legal requirement for them to do it. It's not a Brown Act issue. It's not a Brown Act issue putting it, you know, whoever introduces the motion. You can ask them to do that, like, hey, this is an idea. I'd like to at least know who thought of the idea, but maybe no one thought of the idea. Maybe it's just something that a stakeholder asked at a meeting and it's coming on. So you have to it's a suggestion, recommendation you can make. I had a question here in the back there.
Yeah, back to number 3, you were using it as an example. Discussion and possible action approving expenditure not to exceed 500. Now, should we list something that specific? And does that lock us in? I mean, perhaps in the course of the discussion, we realize we really, on this, we really want to amp it up a little bit and go to 750 or 1,000. Does that preclude discussion that goes above
you know,
500?
you see, now you're asking me for my judgment on it, okay? Because you're really asking me to evaluate it. Look, the 500 gives you a good cap, all right? If you exceeded it, all right, I could say, okay, 501. If you went to 501, technically you're not here, right? But there's also a notice under the Brown Act of being substantially complied. You've given notice of the amount, about $500, all right? So that idea is out there for the reasonable person. They know what you're going to spend. You're coming in, you actually spend 501. That's not going to be a big Brown Act concern. You double it to 1,000, right, when your budget is only 37,000, now that impacts a reasonable person in a different way. I may not care if you spent 500 on this item, but I may have showed up to your meeting to complain if it was 1,000.
Well, my question is then, should we just say approving an expenditure?
No, because you got to give an idea about what it. Hey, what if it's 300,000? You know, you've got to convey that idea of what it is to the individual, because they're going to be concerned with different, you know. If it's a minimal amounts are going to be, they're going to cause a concern to people differently. You know, you may not care, like, you know, what you spend on lunch every day, but if you're thinking about a bigger purchase like a car, like those are things that impact you differently. The same thing with your stakeholders in the community. They're going to evaluate that expenditure, because you have to look at this from the concept of that member of the public. Like, does that make an impact, or would that make a difference on why they would be interested to show up in the meeting? You know, 501, if you actually ended up doing that, I don't think you'd have a problem with the Brown Act. If you're doubling it, then I'd probably say, why don't you may want to renotice and repost this again.
We've run into this situation before where we'll start off saying we're going to spend 500, and then after discussion, after comments from the public, after all the inputs received, and we look at it, somebody's made a really good case why it should be 1,500 instead of 500. And, you know, after the discussion takes place, the decision is made to go with the higher amount. I mean, if it's put on the agenda in good faith that this is, you know, just off the cuff what we think we're going to go for, and then you know, a good discussion involving the public is had at the meeting, and a higher number is arrived at, is that a problem, or do we have to say, well, sorry, we're not going to be able to make this decision until next month?
I would table it at that point in time. You know, if it's that important, then have a special meeting. If it's that important, then write it in such a way so that in an amount not to exceed 1,500. So again, you don't want to trap yourself here, but, you know, put that on the agenda in an amount not to exceed 1,500.
See, that's the problem. It's difficult to know, because you can't have substantive discussion on this before the meeting. Correct. It's difficult to arrive at a well thought out number. Well, until you've had the discussion at the meeting, and then if it's off by much from what you just guessed.
Well, this is where committees become then important, for the committees to discuss those details and bring a better ballpark figure in terms of monies or details of a project. So, right.
Yeah, and remember too, like, one of the things, like, if even if you didn't have time to get this to go to the committee, all right, in my capacity as, I'm going to step into Dave's shoes for just a second. In my capacity as president, if I'm here on your board, right, and this item's coming up, and I'm not sure, like, well, what would be the amount that we're going to do? I can ask 4 of you guys, hey, go out, do some investigation, and then report back to me at the next board meeting on what you think, or go out, do some investigation, give me an idea what you think it would be. So he has that ability to just kind of ask for additional information from you. So he can, remember, if he's doing it, he can ask, you know, the 4 of you to go out and gather some information to give him a better sense of what it is. Otherwise, yeah, sometimes he's just shooting from the hip and making some guesses on things, and he's using his best judgment to try to get it right. But if that's not necessarily a huge problem to be having. I think that there's ways that we can easily modify that to bring you into compliance quickly. You know, then just think about, you know, add a little, you know, an amount not to exceed 1,500, and that should cover it. I mean, just if you find that you're constantly under, then you know that you need to. It's like the contractors that come and they do the work at your house. Yeah, I know that price is going to double. Okay, so double it on your agenda. You know, do that. All right. And anything else?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Yes.
I'm just having a little confused moment here. Is my understanding that tonight was a special meeting?
It is a special meeting.
Okay, the agenda says the general meeting agenda. So I'm going to ask for a point of clarification. Earlier you said that a special meeting could only be on a specific topic that would not be, that's something different than what was a general meeting.
No, a special meeting is anything not a general meeting.
Okay. So the special meeting has to have its specific purpose. And that specific purpose also includes business that would generally be heard at the general meeting.
Sure. Let me repeat it. A special meeting is anything not a general meeting. You could have one item. You could have 50 items. You could have 100 items. It's just another meeting that's occurring that's not your regular meeting. The special meeting could be the next day. The special meeting could be, you know, the day after your regular meeting. It doesn't have to have any reason or purpose. It's just simply the need to conduct a meeting in addition to a regular meeting.
Okay.
Then there's not, and again, like yeah, sometimes the words may get mixed up. That's not a big problem. The fact is that this was actually posted even beyond the special notice requirements. So it was posted more like.
Well, again, we posted it beyond the special notice requirements,
Correct.
but it's got general board meeting items
So what?
on it.
So what?
So
It's posted properly. You're going to find.
I just want to make sure
Yeah,
that we
that
can have
happens.
general board
Special general, not a
meetings
big
on
deal.
special
You can have joint meetings. Of
Any other things? I mean, I'll answer more questions if you guys want to do that, and I don't want to. I think you've had a real good background and a question here.
So just another kind of clarification thing. I've heard a lot of contention in some of our prior meetings that certain people were not informed of a vote ahead of time. And by that, I mean, let's say the public was never engaged in anything the council did because they were unaware of the council. Is it our responsibility to go door to door or take people by the hand, take the public out of that stupor that they largely seem to be in, because these meetings are generally empty when we have them? Is it our responsibility as members of the city to go above and beyond and reach out and grab the public and bring them here so that we know about certain issues, or is it only the postings that matter?
Well,
just postings?
No, you're talking about something that there's not a legal requirement for you to go out and do that, but is that a good idea? Yes.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So you know, I don't want to say like, you know, don't do it. That's a good idea. If you can manage to do it or involve the public and somehow more in the work you're doing, you're going to find that it substantially increases the clout and authority of your neighborhood council.
Well, I guess my point or my question is that there is no requirement, though, for us to go door to door,
Correct.
right? Because I've heard that before from the public. Why didn't you go door to door?
No.
And I then did a little study of my own and found that out of the 58,000 people that are our residents, it would take 408 hours, I think, to reach each one of them for 2 minutes.
There's no legal. It's up to you guys what you think will be good to reach them.
Because that was not an allegation.
No, that's not.
Not maybe not written out, but that was verbally.
Yeah,
Alleged.
that was,
Okay, not a requirement. It's like, you know, thank you. We're trying to engage our stakeholders.
Well,
These are good ideas.
I want to say thank you for everything you guys are doing.
Yeah.
You guys are out.
No, yeah, you guys are doing great. Thank you very much for your hard work.
Thanks for having us.
And I have one last question, and then we can move. This has to do with conflicts of interest. We do have 2 issues here for funding in newsletters, all right? And in one of them, it involves a homeowners group, Old Granada Hills Residents Group, that publishes a monthly newsletter. I'm president of that group by virtue of the fact that
I'll talk with you outside the meeting.
No, I intend to recuse.
Okay.
That's not a
You've already
problem.
decided, all right.
And I intend to recuse because I'm on both boards. My question is, we have several other people here who are members. The fact that they are members of that organization, do they also have to recuse?
I'll talk with those people outside the meeting before you start.
All right.
Okay. And again, the reason is
And then the same goes for the other newsletter, which is the chamber. We have the same
Yes,
situation.
I'll be happy.
All right.
Anybody who has that concern, I can talk with you just privately real quickly.
Veterans should probably recuse ourselves in the park too.
You know, one thing that I do want to bring up just real quick, remember, if you're going to your committee meetings and you want to observe, remember, you can only observe. No providing input, no discussion, no talking. If you don't like that number on your committee, if you want to have a larger committee, then the way to do it is notice it as a joint board and committee meeting. So that'll then let all your board members, if you have a committee meeting where you want everybody to participate, then do it that way. One question? And
so
then,
your suggestion earlier about mailing the agenda to another board member. I have 5 board members on my committee and a couple stakeholders. So I've got there's 5 board members. I'm going to take the agenda and in advance of the meeting, I'm going to email it to another board member.
No, not your fellow committee.
No, I'm going to somebody outside my committee.
Another, like a committee, make a committee, but like an outreach committee.
Which is now going to involve a 6th board member.
No, but it's not going to involve the 6th board member, because all they're doing is they're helping you. Look, there are some exceptions, okay, and I'm going to talk with you about how you do this. There are some exceptions about things that you are allowed to talk about among a majority. All of you could talk about this. All of you could send an email to each other that says we're available for the meeting, okay? All of you could send an email about, is this a good day? So there are some board business things that you're able to discuss. Another one of those items is the item to be listed on the agenda. Now, when you discuss it, don't discuss it in the sense of, don't discuss the substance of it. You're just discussing, hey, can you help? Let's make this easy, okay? Work with the lowest.
So we're okay with the, hey, do any of you want anything on the agenda? And everybody comes back and says, I want this, I want that, I want the other thing.
Of course.
All good.
Of course, that's all good. Because what you don't do is, okay, if somebody sends out that notice, hey, what do you guys want on the agenda? Then just hit reply 1 back. Just, hey, I would like to see this item, back to your chair. Hey, put this item on the agenda for me. Not necessarily that can be a concern if everybody replied all and said something, but sometimes people tend to put a little bit more into their reply and they start going into the substance of it, This, I think we should approve this because, and that's where the problem is that starts happening.
Then you need to shut down the
So,
conversation.
yeah, I just send her, oops, let's save that discussion for the meeting. And if you find that it happens, we'll work with you guys at getting it fixed. So, I think we're wrapping up. I think we're wrapping up the comments here. So we're good. Anything else? Thank you guys. So, but work with the lowest. Did she give you her contact?
She did.
You have? Okay, great.
Anyone that needs her email, just let me know.
Okay, you guys. You have a good one.
Thank you very much.
All right. Is there somebody that someone that wanted to talk over about
Well, we
Take a
need to
brief
talk about
recess.
recusal.
Yeah, can we take a break?
Okay.
We want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
5 minutes, good.
So we can,
yes.
start this out?
All right, let's take a 5-minute break, and we do
Hey,
need
do you
a
have a
5-minute break.
card?
9:15.
No, it's with the lowest.
Okay, good. I've got a Lois's card. Okay.
We'll go outside, we're gonna discuss.
All right, so let's discuss this recusal issue. Okay.
I needed to get rid of it.
It can.
And a whole bunch of other things. And I get credit for it.
How are you?
For the Brown Act, there's no, I'm thinking of the ethics training or the funding. The two trainings that the department requires proof of having taken it is ethics and funding.
Take the funding, and I'll get my highlight.
Okay, no,
And I was told that I had to take a refresher on the funding.
the refresher, no, it's not a requirement. I mean, that might be changing sometime soon. But the requirement is for, there's refreshers on the funding, there you gotta review your ethics training, or you gotta do a refresher. That's it, that's the ethics. Yeah, that's the one you gotta do as a board member every 2 years.
That's not what they told me.
No, this was called Brown, which is.
I understand that, but in my council, they're saying, oh, you gotta take more council training.
Oh, okay, oh, no, not Brown.
You wanna take it once, right?
I wish every board would take it as one, but it's not one of the required trainings. That may change soon.
And they told me I had to take it again.
Maybe, that whoever told you that, let them know that the only two required ones that you already know ethics and funding.
Where do I take the ethics one?
Well, you do it online, you can do it online, or the Darren and Alois and their other colleague, Carmen, we try to get them to schedule live sessions about once a quarter. Okay, so let's touch base. Okay, I got your email here, so I can send you the link. Good. Yeah, I'll send you the link where you just click and it'll take you to the Ethics Commission website. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay. All right.
I got a quick question. Is Doug's office have a requirement to do
I'm back in town for a while now, probably 3 weeks. So we'll get together. I'll get some cranking time because I've been giving some thought to.
Right. Other than that, they really don't have any requirement to do any outreach whatsoever. The reason is because in the Brown Act, they discuss the intent of the private public information that you, the public had, or that they reasonably could have an interest in.
There's a couple of churches that are around in the.
So I'm saying,
maybe they might like to be involved too.
okay, but
Names.
yeah, there's no way that they would even be informed of the posting of the agendas without any outreach. And in your definition of outreach, for instance, when this, not in South Neighborhood Council, they don't even have a standing committee. They don't meet. They don't do any outreach.
That makes sense.
And this is taxpayers' money. So I'm saying that this between the Brown Act, what was stated, and Dunn's office, and because I've been on previously on the outreach report, I'm always saying this is a point of interest that we should bring to the stakeholders. And the council is, they're elected and they represent the people, they're representative. But here, there's no representation going on because they don't. But they're not, because they have no requirement to do any outreach, and they don't do any, and the response to me always is, we're not required to do it. We don't do it, now we don't even meet. Yeah, but that is not outreach.
It serves to inform the public.
They don't even, the public doesn't even know about it, let alone know the places, you know.
That's it, besides, like I said, besides outside of having, whether it be board member volunteers or board members themselves go out.
No, I'm not talking about that.
Someone made a question about 5 years.
But this thing about the.
But it's better than
about the.
which is what the Brown
Yeah, but the definition of outreach is communication. There is no communication by just posting, that's notice, you're giving notice.
Because
And now there's the early notification system that the city manages. The LC has an email database that will be so easy for the public to sign up on that. How will the public find out about it?
And some people, not everybody has an email database.
Exactly. So it's a question of which came first.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a problem because you're using taxpayers' money and the decisions are being made, like you heard here, you don't even have to go to a committee. It just comes from members. They don't even put their names down. It's the same person they have conflict of interest with. Because you've got Old Granada Hills Residents Group, you advertise in Old Granada Hills Residents Group. Majority of the members
They don't have
a desire.
Because they're gonna say no one.
There's no desire.
And it falls within
All right, you want to take your seats, please? I'm going to ask board members to please come down in front so we can take a vote here without having to go through the whole.
I did it.
Well, no, I gotta wake up
There's
and organize myself.
no standing committee. They don't need.
Okay, board member.
The only, there's only two things listed under bylaws, and I want to say that that's kind of like.
Anthony, where are you? You still outside?
Jerry's outside.
Let me pass this as you guys come in. So their form, especially talks about conflict of interest rules, but in non-financial kind,
Okay.
which is what a lot of people, board members, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'm going to.
Oh, you're looking for cards? Handout on conflict of interest.
We got a couple of board members back there. We got a couple of board members back there.
All right. All right, before we get started with the board issues, we've not yet had public comment period, so I'm going to ask for public comment on non-agendized items. Any public comment on non-agendized items? One more time. Any public comment on non-agendized items? Yes, Bob.